I'm Marsh, Managing Director of Mentoring for Success. I'd like to talk to you about something we call the Mentor's Toolkit. Before we get into it, I'd like to discuss why we need a toolkit. It's really important that mentors and mentees have the ability to build mental models to come together for their conversations. And the latest evidence and all the research shows very clearly that experts perform best in this space over there from their own learned, guided experiences. But we spend too much time on training and development in the classroom. That only accounts for about 10% of what a really effective expert is all about. But in mentoring, we also need to cover this very important component, which is what we learn from others, or what we call vicarious learning. So we want to be able to get across the whole spectrum of learning opportunities, but primarily stay in this area, the 90%, which we call experiential wisdom. So we've developed something called the Mentor's Toolkit. This is made up of essentially 3 components. The first component are some fairly basic communication and collaboration tools called the Core Toolkit. The second is more advanced and deals with emotional intelligence, and it deals with some of the latest neuroscience techniques and learning styles, understanding the coherence capabilities of the heart-brain conditioning, and then something called the Thinking Mentor, which really deals in more detail with brain-sensitized learning and memory formation. I would like to talk for the moment about the reason behind the toolkit. If we look at an expert, if we consider that in every one of our heads we have what is estimated as 100 billion neurons or brain cells. Inside that head, those neurons, brain cells, are connected via 1,000 trillion synaptic connections to the rest of our body and to the rest of our brain, which means that we've got a sort of an incalculable number of connections that are made. So every person's brain is mapped completely differently to everyone else. How do we then try and transfer wisdom and knowledge from someone's brain who's wired together in such a complex formation to someone else's brain who's completely differently wired? So we want to ask simple questions: who, what, where, when, how. And one of the things we do is to try and build mental mentorship models, a common model where mentor and mentee understand what they're trying to transfer and how they're doing it and why they're doing it. And it starts off in typical areas, what we call tangible knowledge. It looks at the mentor's skills and knowledge. It looks at relationships and networks. Those are key in building a mentee's capability for the future. They're key networks. The sources of knowledge. Where do mentors get their key fundamental knowledge sources from? And then the processes and methods and behaviors, values and attitude, which are so important to success. So these are the tangible areas, and we need tools and collaborative conversation starters to share those insights and those connections. And then we have a far more tougher area to look into as well, which is what we call the intangible knowledge. How do we share critical thinking? What makes an expert capable of walking into an environment and being able to think critically way beyond a less experienced person's capability? Hunches and intuition, where do these come from? Critical insights and gut feel, how do we map those? How do we share those? How do we transfer those? Experience and lessons from other projects, other events, other job areas, world insights and things like that. And then heuristics and rules of thumb. How do experts develop heuristics? In other words, how do they change what they're doing in the process of doing it, and rules of thumb that they developed. So really what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to have conversations from the sources of wisdom, the sources of knowledge, and we're wanting to have this collaborative, engaged discovery, taking this tacit knowledge, behaviors, experience, lessons, relationships, networks, putting it into a process of engaged discovery via mentoring, where the mentees then take this on, it becomes explicit, they talk about it, and then it becomes implicit in the way they do their work. So essentially what we're wanting to do here is, if we're looking at learning and memory formation and the different learning modalities, and if we look at the y-axis over here from 0 to 100%, how do we optimize learning and memory formation and memory recall at 90 days? And if we're looking at the different learning modalities, our historical focus has always been on watch, one and understand. It's to do with listening and learning, teaching, it's to do with lectures, it's to do with presentations, It's to do with a little bit of observation and things like that. And this builds very limited but initial context, which is important. This is what's known as semantic learning. It's the basic gathering of facts, figures, concepts, ideas, and models. But it has at maximum around a 30% or 25 to 30% memory recall at about 90 days or 100 days. If we really want to increase that, we take it to what we call do one, developing action potential. And what this does is the mentees now get involved in active simulations. They get involved in group collaborative discussion, participation. They develop knowledge assets. They develop processes and ideas, and they start to get the initial feedback. This builds a critical associative context. So it's not just facts and figures, but it's connecting those facts and figures in critical patterns. But if we really want to accelerate this up to about 90%, we need to take it to what we call Teach One, which is building long-term capability. And this is the area of episodic learning. It's where the experts come into their own, and it's where they talk about their stories, the retrospective investigation of particular events, and it's really in this space over here. So it's individuals practice and they get feedback. They participate in groups, and essentially the best way to get to this high level of memory retention is the mentees essentially become the mentors. They have to watch one, do one, teach one, and what they need to do is correct and show and improve the system or the learning for others. And that's really why we have a toolkit. So next I'd like to move into what the core tools and have an in-depth discussion on the first of the core tools. Okay, let's have a look at the third tool in the core tool set. We call this the retrospective analysis. It really comes out of the project management and the scientific environment, and it's a very simple tool that is incredibly powerful as a conversation starter between mentor and mentee in order for the mentee to go away and accumulate very rich episodic learning. So let's have a look. It's an 8-question or 8-step process, and it starts off very simply with what did we do right? So it takes any event, any project, any situation where there's core learning that needs to be packaged and passed on and shared with others. And you could start off with the positive aspect, what did we do right, and go into that in a little bit more detail. How and why did we get the right things right? And this is important, and we're looking for a one-page document that we call a knowledge map. We're not looking for pages and pages. So the synthesization and the clustering is absolutely essential at this stage. A couple of points, 3 to 5 points maximum, what you did right. Each one of those points slightly unpacked as to what you did and how you got it right, which is the key assumptions, the key stakeholders, key role players, good decisions that were made. The other side of the coin obviously is what did we do wrong? And once again, this is 3 to 5 key high-level points of what we got wrong, and then going into more detail, how and why did we get the wrong things wrong? Once again, you don't want to have piles and piles of notes and points over here. Succinct, short, high-level, impactful. You can, if you want, transpose these two. You could start off with what did we do wrong and how did we get the wrong things wrong first, if that was a particularly negative event. So up to you which way you want to turn it around. But question number 5 is the crux of the whole tool, and that is, what must we do differently next time? And this is where we would like the mentee to look at the good things, the bad things, and out of that extract in some form of knowledge-based synthesis the key learnings, the key lessons from that event or project, which should either be repeated again or not repeated ever again. And these are packaged into some kind of nice format. So once again, these should be at a high level, impactful, maybe 5 things that we would do differently next time. What we also want to see is that the mentee themselves, besides the organizational learning, has learnt personally. So question number 6 are, what are the 3 most important lessons I, as the mentee, have learnt from this retrospective analysis? So this looks at packaging the organizational wisdom, and this looks at internalizing it for the mentee themselves. The 7th question is very quickly, who must we share this knowledge with? So this is around making sure, is it just with my colleagues? Is it just with my mentor? Is it with my whole mentoring group? Is it with the whole organization? Is it with suppliers, other key stakeholders? And the 8th question is, how must we package, distribute and store this knowledge? So now let's have a look at a real practical example of how a mentor could sit down with a mentee and very quickly do a retrospective analysis on a critical past event. Come in. Good afternoon, Sinod.
Yebo, Mr. Marsh.
Sawubona.
Unjani, sir?
Ngiyaphila.
Nami ngiyaphila, Mr. Marsh.
Sinod,
Yebo, sir.
how is the mentoring going? We've had 2 meetings, and are you on track with the tools that you're busy learning?
Yes, so far, so good, Mr. Marsh.
Okay.
I'm on track, yes.
That's great. Okay, I would like to try one of the other tools that we learned recently.
Yes.
This is the tool we call the retrospective analysis. And in line with our wishes to get you into the project office support role, what I thought we could do as a good learning experience for the 2 of us is look at the experiences we had with the computer hardware and software upgrade that we did 2 or 3 years ago. I think there's a lot to learn. I think you can learn a lot. I think you could help the company learn a lot. I think there's a lot of benefit in you doing this, and it would certainly prepare you for the project office support role in terms of how to think through potential problems before they actually happen.
Okay.
So just looking at the tool, I think we're going to use the software hardware upgrade. I'd like you to focus your first question, what did we do right? What I'd like you to do is interview key people in the company.
Okay, sir.
The directors, myself, the bookkeeper, the finance people, the project people, the facilitators, some of the consultants, and find out in all of those interviews if you can extract 3 to 5 of the key things that you think we did right. Okay? Then I'd like you to drill down into those 3 to 5 things, little bit by little bit, and get a bit more detail. How and why did we get the right things right? What were the key assumptions we made? What good decisions were made? Who was in the right place at the right time? What did we do right? And that's the sort of thing we want to repeat. So this exercise will be very valuable. We're also not looking for a lot of paperwork. So my suggestion is keep all of this on a single page. You know, using our knowledge mapping technique, keep it on a single page. What I'd like you to then do is look what we did wrong. This is very critical because we don't want to repeat some of those very tough lessons. You'll remember what we went through.
Yes, sir.
And I would like you then to drill down in a bit more detail. Why do you and how do you think we got the wrong things wrong? I think that will be very valuable. I think this is something, if we do this exercise, this is a lot more than just the benefit that we will get as in developing you into the role. I think we can really learn something out of this. So I'm looking really forward to your feedback here.
Okay,
and I think what we'll do is we'll arrange for you to present to the office. At the next management meeting, we'll get you to present this at the next management meeting. I think that would be really worthwhile. So you know what I'd like you to really extract out of your learning is what must we do differently next time? In other words, maybe what are the 5 critical lessons that we've learned, and what must we learn from these, essentially from the above 4 questions.
Okay, sir.
Then I think what I'd like to see is what do you as an individual, as Synod, the project office support person, what does this mean to you? I think the above are possibly lessons that we learn as a company, but I would like to know as you as an individual, what do you think you learned out of this? And then importantly, how could you as a person, as an individual in the project office, how could you help all of the rest of the people in the company to avoid the challenges we had before, the mistakes we made, and also to try and repeat the good stuff that we did? So that's you as at an individual level. Then what I'd like you to do is come up with your idea. How best we should share this with everyone, and who should we share it with? So you can use, the sky's your limit over here. Come up with whatever you think is the best idea. A good song, a good idea, a poster, a picture, something on the internet. Any of those ideas, completely up to you. And lastly, How should we package? How should we share this? What should we do with it? I think you should look at using our internal knowledge repository and make sure some way, if you can develop a trigger system so that some way we learn from this next time we do a major internal project like a hardware or software upgrade. And what I want to suggest is we've had 2 meetings in my office so far, and we need to break down the sort of the formality of all of this. So what I'd like to give you is an offer to you to say, next time, let's go to lunch. You choose a restaurant close to the office, and we'll have this discussion over lunch together. How does that work for you?
That will work, Mr. Marsh.
Okay.
That will be great.
How long do you think you need in order to do this?
To go through all this, at least plus minus 2.5 hours, Mr. Marsh.
Okay, to go through this. Okay, so we need to give ourselves some good time to be able to go through this. This won't happen over a short meal.
Yes.
And I suggest if you could take a month to complete your investigation, and then we'll get it going then.
Yes, I'll do that. So like I'm not going to offend anyone if I go through them and ask them questions and what did we do wrong and what did they like on all this. Yeah, Mr. Marsh, that will be good.
Okay, that's a very good point that you raised. People will be sensitive to what we got wrong, so that's a very, very good point that you raised. So let's make sure we don't offend anybody. Explain to them why we're doing it, and let's see how well it goes. Thank you, Sonali.
That will do, Mr. Marsh.
Okay.
Have a lovely day.
That's
It was
great.
nice meeting you, sir.
Good to see you again. Thank you very much.